Welcome to the first episode of the King Films College Basketball Bracketology predictions for the 2021 season. I've created a bracket that I think reflects each team's total body of work as well as the eye test to a certain extent for each team. So if you think these rankings are a bit asymmetrical, say, with the AP poll, it's because I factor in the total body of work and the AP poll is more of just a impulse ranking based on what the committee likes and doesn't like and tends to skew towards the blue blood teams and whatnot. Also worth noting is any team 12 and below in seed wise is only in here because they get an auto bid. There are 31 auto bids this year as the Ivy League is not playing a season. And so any team at about the 12 seed and below, minus the first four match, we'll get into that, is an auto bid, so they will have to win their conference tournament, so they are very much not locks yet, but most of the teams we see here are having the best season in their conference so far. So let's get started with the top half of the first and second brackets. They're not geographical this year, so I've used the S-curve methodology, which they're going to use this year because there's no geographical considerations in the selection process as for the regional games because, as you may know, all of the games are in Indiana this year. So at the number one overall seed, we've got Gonzaga. Even Baylor's win over Kansas is not enough to bring them over Gonzaga just yet. They need one more. Gonzaga is sitting at 5-0 in quality wins. Baylor's at 4-0, and I think Baylor just needs one more. They both have wins over Kansas, so I gave Gonzaga the nod. But going down the stretch, Gonzaga may need to play Baylor to get that number one overall seed. That was a game that was on the schedule, and I hope they can reschedule it because Gonzaga's schedule going down the stretch in the WCC is weak. Going into an enticing 8-9 matchup, Florida State against Boise State. Both of these teams are having great seasons. Boise State putting up numbers in the Mountain West and out of conference, and Florida State just scored a big win over Louisville. At the 5 seed in this bracket, we've got UConn. They're having a great season despite losing to St. John's today. That moved them from the 4 seed to the 5 seed here. And then speaking of the 4 seed, we've got Colorado having a good season in the Pac-12. And right now, their body of work suggests a 4 seed for them. Moving on to the other side, we've got Baylor, again, number 2 overall seed. Great wins over Kansas and Texas Tech this last weekend. Then we've got St. Louis. They haven't played in a while because of COVID, but they're getting back in the action this week. And Rutgers is one of those Big Ten teams that's kind of sitting towards the middle bottom right now. Don't really know what to say. They have some good wins, and they have a lot of losses, but to good teams. That's what we're going to see in these Big Ten teams. And Rutgers is one of them here at the 9 seed. A very dangerous 9 seed, I will say. Then we've got USC at the 5, a 2-loss team with over 10 wins. And you will see the same with Alabama, who has 3 losses, but they're earning the 4 seed here. That Alabama team is very much on the up and up right now. Moving into the bottom half of the brackets, we've got another Pac-12 team in Oregon facing off against Colorado State at the 11 seed. Colorado State has put together a great season in the Mountain West so far, and they've got an enticing series against Utah State this week. I'd be interested to see the result, as that will have seeding consequences. We'll get to Utah State later. Oregon has had a good season as well. They've been off on COVID issues, but resume play this week with a game against Oregon State. Tennessee, 3 seed, is also having a great season here. With only the loss to Alabama and a good win over Missouri, their body of work suggests a 3 seed right now. Number 7, Virginia. A lot of people are probably saying that Virginia should be higher, but I will give you a couple caveats. Virginia's only good win is over Clemson this last weekend, and that was a Clemson team coming off weeks of COVID protocol, so you can't really grade that win as up to par, but I think that this Virginia team is starting to show signs of being one of the best in the ACC, an abnormally weak ACC, shall I say. So I think Virginia will be trending up in the coming weeks. Arkansas started off great, I believe 9-0, but now they've just lost a couple games and they're sitting at the 10 seed. We'll see where they go from here in a tough SEC. Then we've got Houston. They've got a good win over Texas Tech and should be the favorite in the American, just the one loss to Tulsa for them. Moving on to the other side, we've got Xavier at the 6. This Xavier team has a lot of wins, but I'm not sold on their ability. But again, total body of work for these teams. And then we've got Utah State, who I alluded to earlier. Pretty much an 11 seed against 11 seed matchup against Colorado State. Maybe one like you'd see in the first 4. This week, you're going to want to tune in. It is a 2-game series, so if one team can get a sweep, they can maybe move up to the 10 line. Going on to another SEC 3 seed, we've got Missouri here. They only have 2 losses to aforementioned Tennessee and Mississippi State on the road. Missouri also has a good win over Oregon, as well as some others. They've played a hard strength of schedule, and their total body of work says that this is a great team deserving of the 3 seed right now. At the 7-10 matchup, we've got LSU at the 7. A lot of people are overvaluing LSU, but they're playing Alabama this week in a huge game, and we'll see who comes out with it. And then we've got 10 seed Pittsburgh. A lot of people are going to say this is too high, but they got a 2-game sweep of Syracuse, who a lot of people were saying was just on the outside looking in of the tournament bubble before the first game of that series, and then Pittsburgh got 2 off of them. So I think 10 is fair for Pitt. This is a good team, and again, a weak ACC. So we'll see what happens with them. And then we've got a 2 seed Minnesota. I'm sorry, people are going to be saying that maybe this whole regional, maybe people won't like Missouri at the 3 seed and Xavier at the 6. I don't love Xavier at the 6, but on to Minnesota. They scored a great win over Michigan, and all of their 4 losses are to great teams, and they have some great wins over tournament teams like Michigan, Iowa, we'll see later. St. Louis was up in this quadrant as well. These are all good teams. Minnesota has a lot of good wins. A key note is that they are undefeated 11-0 at home. And, of course, these games aren't too far from home in Indiana, but on the neutral site, we'll see how they are. Again, no fans. Moving on to the bottom half of the tournament field, we've got the aforementioned Iowa team at the 1 seed. And Iowa's had a great season. They split with Minnesota. That's one of their losses. And their total body of work out of the Big Ten, one of the best teams, shows that they should be a 1 seed. Then we've got West Virginia and Seton Hall. People may be saying that this is a bit low for West Virginia, seeing as they're still ranked in the AP Top 25, which obviously only corresponds to the top 6 seeds. But West Virginia really just isn't that great of a team. They have a lot of good losses against good teams, but they don't really have many quality wins yet. So I'll wait for them to get that. And their total body of work in eye test just says 8 seed to me right now. Seton Hall is one of the weaker 9 seeds, but they're here. They're playing good in the Big East, where I feel that anyone can win on any day, and they'll just have to keep it up to keep this seeding. They'll definitely have the quality matchups to do so. Then we've got an interesting matchup between Virginia Tech, the 5, and a Michigan State/Oklahoma 12. Again, this early in the season, we assume that there are no bid thieves, which would be an auto bid team. So say Gonzaga does not win their conference tournament, and then say St. Mary's or BYU steals a bid from the field. We're assuming that that isn't happening yet. So we've got a 12 seed matchup in the first 4 between Michigan State, who has struggled down the stretch in the Big Ten. They started out top 5 with a win over Duke, which is devalued over time as well. And then we've got an Oklahoma team who is trending slightly positive in a hard Big 12 this year. And at that 5 seed, we've got Virginia Tech. I think they're a great team in a weak ACC, with Louisville taking another loss and Clemson taking one over the weekend. I think Virginia Tech could be as high as the 3 seed when it's all said and done. Ohio State as the 4 seed, they're also a low 4 seed here. They're a little overvalued, but they have come to play down the stretch. A good out-of-conference win against UCLA, among others, and this is a great Ohio State team. They lost a couple games in a row for the AP to take them out of the top 10, but 4 seed for the Buckeyes. Another Big Ten team, we've got Michigan at the 1 seed, and Michigan's put together a great schedule. They haven't played the best top-to-bottom schedule, but they've gotten it done, only losing to Minnesota, who, again, they split with, so Minnesota split against both Michigan and Iowa, both 1 seeds right now. Moving on to the 8-9 matchup, we've got Texas Tech, who scored a big win last week over Texas, but then fell to Baylor against a 9-seed BYU team that also has put up a lot of wins. Some of you may think that Texas Tech is undervalued at the 8 seed, and I'd agree slightly because this is one of the better 8 seed teams, could easily be a 7. But what you don't realize about Texas Tech is their schedule outside of those top tier games against Texas and Baylor and Houston, which they lost, is they've lost those games, and they also haven't played the best strength of schedule outside of that Houston game outside of their conference. So they've played against Oklahoma State and Oklahoma, and they lost one of those. So this is a Texas Tech team where you just have to pray that they get more quality wins, and they will jump up the seeds quickly at that point because their only losses are to good Big 12 teams as well as Houston. Moving on, we've got Wisconsin and Winthrop at the 12. Winthrop would be the automatic bid qualifier, but they're just as much in the at-large bid conversation as well here with an undefeated record. My only problem with them is they haven't played much of anyone so far. They have a good win over UNC Greensboro and a good win over Furman, but that's not really going to get it done when you compare to a team like Michigan State that just has a bunch of good win opportunities at their hands as well. So Winthrop may need to win their conference tournament. As for the Badgers at the 5 seed, Wisconsin's played great all year, but they've started to falter down the stretch, being upset or almost upset a couple of times in Big Ten play. The first time to Maryland, and then the close, almost upset bid to Indiana, and then in this last week they got blown up by Michigan. So a lot of people may have been thinking that they were the 2 or 3 seed, but now they're down to the 5. And then we've got number 4, UCLA. We talked about them before. Only undefeated team left in Pac-12 play, and they're sitting at a 4 seed. Going into the bottom half of these brackets, we've got a number 6 seed Creighton who just suffered a loss to Butler. And this Creighton team's pretty good, but they're just sitting at that 6 seed right now. I'm not sold on this Creighton team. The eye test hasn't sold me so far. The AP poll is high on them, but give me Creighton at the 6 seed. And then we've got another undefeated Group of 5 team, and that's Drake. And they haven't played anyone yet either. I think 11 seed, they could be swapped with Winthrop for the 12, but they'll probably win their conference tournament. But they definitely won't go undefeated. This Drake team isn't that good, but they've been on COVID pause for a while and just not playing games. So we'll see what happens when they get back, hopefully this week. Another 3 seed, and this is the worst 3 seed, is Clemson. They lost that one to Virginia by 25, and if they continue to play like that for even another game, they're going to get relegated down maybe a couple seed slots because they are the last 3, maybe even to the 5, 6, 7. They have a good resume right now, and they've fulfilled the eye test for now with close wins, but they're going to have to keep that up if they want that 3 seed. 7-10 matchup, intriguing between a 5-loss Illinois and a 4-loss North Carolina. Illinois has only lost to the best of opponents, though. So Illinois is a good team in a tough Big Ten. They're going to accumulate losses, but they're a few games over 500, so they'll get the 7 seed here. North Carolina hasn't sold me yet. They lost another one this weekend to Florida State, who had a great weekend, probably starting from that 7-10 line and moving up to the 8 seed. But we just have Roy Williams' team at the 10 here. And then at number 2, we've got Villanova, who also hasn't played a game in a while. They're slated to get back on track this week. And they're just sitting with that one loss to Virginia Tech. So I can't really say anything about this team. They have a couple good wins, and they'll sit at the 2 seed until they lose again. On the other side, we've got a 6 seed Louisville, who got relegated via their loss that we talked about a million times so far to Florida State, and we'll get into that first 4 matchup later. And then we've got Kansas against, again, Furman. We talked about them earlier. They lost to Winthrop, but winning their conference right now. And then Kansas suffered another loss to Baylor, enough to keep them as the second worst 3 seed right now. They've only lost to good teams, but they haven't performed their best against good teams. They do have a win over Creighton, which is a good one, but remember, I only have Creighton at the 6 seed, so that's a good win over the field, but they're going to have to keep it up in a tough, top-heavy Big 12, and I'm afraid that Texas Tech might pass them soon. Next, we've got Purdue, who's a couple games over, just like Illinois in a tough Big 10, so they're going to get the 7 seed here, and then Stanford, who has a good win over Alabama, which has really aged well for them. They lost to UNC, and they lost their last two to Utah and Colorado, and then they've got a tough two matchups this week against the LA teams, UCLA at the 4 seed, and then USC at the 5 seed. So that's going to be resume building opportunities. That's how I like to think of it. Moving on to the 2 matchup, we've got a 2 Texas team that's played great in the Big 12 this year. They're that loss to Texas Tech away from stealing a 1 seed from, say, Iowa here, but Texas, solid 2 team. Going on to the first 4, Florida A&M and North Alabama. These are just 2 automatic bid qualifiers from their conference. Don't need to discuss that further. VCU and San Diego State have both put up incredible seasons. They both have a lot of wins. San Diego State, a great win over both Arizona State and UCLA, and neither were particularly close, but San Diego State did lose twice to Utah State on the road this week, so they're teetering in the tournament right now. And then VCU also teetering. They haven't lost, but they just grabbed themselves the spot here with a lot of wins in that tough A10 conference. As we'll see in the waiting room, there are a few more A10 teams chomping at the bit to take this VCU spot here. And then we've got Grand Canyon and Stony Brook, another good game. Moving on to our current waiting room, we've got St. Bonaventure at number 1, an A10 team with that 6-1, had a couple COVID issues. Richmond was AP poll ranked earlier when everyone thought Kentucky was really good. They do have a win over Kentucky. It's always good to have those wins over the Power 5 because if the committee is a little biased, they'll value those wins. So Richmond at the number 2. And Wichita State, I think, is a really undervalued team here. They're 8-3, I believe, and they're just a good team. They're getting quality wins, and I expect them to be in the tournament probably because they're playing in an American conference where they can scoop up a lot of wins and rise in those NET rankings. NC State is a team that's very much on the downfall. Let Florida State put up over 100 on them, and they played great earlier in the season, racking up a couple close losses and good wins to the ACC's top opponents, but they're very much on the downward trend here, whereas I'd say the previous 3 teams above them are on the upward trend. SMU, another good team in the American that can rack up some good wins in a good American conference and perhaps be in the tournament when it's all said and done. Indiana is a team in the Big Ten that, like Northwestern, has struggled a bit. Could have used that close win against Wisconsin, but they're sitting here in the waiting room. They're going to have to prove something in the Big Ten down the stretch, and that's going to be hard. And it's probably going to take away from one of the other teams that's sitting in the bracket right now. And then we've got number 7, Marquette. Marquette has wins over Creighton and Wisconsin. Those are 2 great wins for this team. They looked a little better back in the day, but Marquette is still very much in it in the waiting room here. And then Northwestern is 500 right now. They had a brutal stretch. If you want to check out my last video on last weekend's predictions, they were a little bit above 500. They've got a game against Wisconsin coming up. Plenty of resume builder games in the Big Ten, but also when you stack up enough good losses, it could be too much, and I'm afraid it is here for this Northwestern team that's only 500. Thank you for watching. Please comment your predictions below for the bracket, and we'll see you next time.